The letter arrived on a Tuesday, which Miriam Chen would later identify as the only remarkable thing about the morning it came. Everything else was ordinary. She had made oatmeal and eaten it standing at the kitchen counter because sitting down for breakfast alone felt like a commitment to something she wasn't ready to commit to. She had watered the plant by the window that was not doing well and pretended not to notice it was not doing well. She had retrieved the mail from the box at the end of the front path in her housecoat because there was no longer anyone to have opinions about her housecoat. Most of the mail was for the previous occupant, a Dr. Felicia who had lived here for 20 years before Miriam and apparently subscribed to several catalogs that had not yet received the news. There was a bill. There was a newsletter from the library where she volunteered on Tuesdays, which she had already read online, but which she would read again in print because she had the time. And there was a letter addressed in careful ballpoint to God, care of whoever is reading this, 14 Albrecht Street, which was her address. Miriam stood at the end of her front path in her housecoat for a moment. Then she went inside, put the kettle on, and opened it. Dear God, my name is Gerald Fitch, and I am writing to formally register a complaint regarding the death of my wife, Barbara Ann Fitch, née Holloway, who passed on the 14th of last month after 49 years of marriage. I have been advised by my daughter that complaining about this will not help and that I need to process my grief, which I understand, but I have also spent 74 years observing that institutions do not improve without formal feedback, and I see no reason why yours should be an exception. My specific complaints are as follows. 1. No adequate explanation was provided. 2. The timing was poor. We had plans. 3. I was not consulted. I understand you are busy. I would nonetheless appreciate a response at your earliest convenience, as I am finding the silence on this matter difficult to interpret. Yours sincerely, Gerald Fitch. P.S. Barbara was a good woman. I don't know if that information is useful to you at this stage, but I wanted to put it on record. Miriam read the letter twice. Then she read it a third time, slowly, the way she had learned to read complaints over 30 years of processing them for the city, looking not at the surface of the grievance, but at the shape of it, the thing underneath the specific language a person chose when they were trying to sound reasonable about something that was destroying them. Gerald Fitch was not really complaining about the lack of explanation. Gerald Fitch was complaining about the silence, the specific, total, unresponsive silence of a house that used to have Barbara in it and now did not. She knew something about that kind of silence. She got out a piece of paper. She uncapped her pen. She sat for a while. Then she wrote, Dear Mr. Fitch, thank you for your letter. I want to assure you that it has been received and read carefully. Regarding your complaints, 1. You are correct that no explanation was provided. I am not able to offer one now that would be adequate. I want to be honest with you about that rather than offer something that sounds like an answer but isn't. 2. The timing was poor. I have noted this. 3. You were not consulted. This was a failure, and I understand why you are angry about it. Your postscript has been recorded. Barbara Ann Fitch, née Holloway, is on the record as a good woman. That information is useful. It is always useful. I am sorry for your loss, Mr. Fitch. I am sorry the silence is difficult to interpret. I hope this letter makes it slightly less total. Yours, whoever is reading this. She posted it the next morning. She felt, walking back from the postbox, faintly ridiculous. She also felt, for the first time in several months, that she had done something with her day. 3 more letters arrived the following week. She didn't know how. She had stopped trying to know how after the second day. It was the kind of question that sat in the way of everything else, and she had spent 30 years learning that some complaints couldn't be processed until you set aside the question of why they'd been filed in the first place. The first was from a teenage girl named Priya, who wanted to know if she was being punished, and if so, for what specifically, because she had been going over the past 3 years carefully and couldn't identify the infraction that would justify what was currently happening to her. And if God could please just tell her what she did wrong, she would try very hard not to do it again. Miriam wrote back that she wasn't being punished. She wrote that some things that felt like punishment were just the world being indiscriminate, which was in some ways worse and in some ways better. She wrote that the fact that Priya was going over the past 3 years looking for her own culpability suggested she was the kind of person who took responsibility seriously, which was a good quality that the situation was currently exploiting unfairly. She wrote, "You didn't do anything wrong. I've checked." She didn't know if that last part was a lie. She sent it anyway. The second letter was a single sheet of paper, unlined, with one word on it. Please. No name, no return address, just the postmark and the word and the specific quality of handwriting that belonged to someone who had steadied their hand before writing it. Miriam sat with this one for a long time. She wrote back, "I hear you. I'm here. Tell me more when you're ready." She didn't know if it would reach anyone. She posted it addressed to the postmark district, to the same impossible addressee, and hoped the same mysterious infrastructure that had been routing letters to her kitchen table was working in both directions. The third letter was from a retired music teacher named Otto, who had been given, he felt, an extraordinary talent for the cello at birth, and had then been placed into a family that couldn't afford lessons, a town that had no orchestra, and a life that had never once created the conditions for him to use what he'd been given. He was not writing in grief. He was writing in the specific fury of a man who had been issued equipment he was never permitted to operate. He called it, in his letter, a design flaw of considerable magnitude. Miriam wrote back that she thought he was right, that it was a design flaw, and that she was sorry. She asked him how old he was. She asked him if he still owned a cello. She wrote at the end, "It is late, but it is not over. Those are different things." She didn't know if she believed that. She sent it anyway. She had learned, over 30 years, that what you believed and what you said to someone in genuine pain were not always required to be the same thing. Not because honesty didn't matter, but because sometimes people needed the better version of the truth while they were still in the middle of things. Letter. Received 6th week. To God, or whoever. I don't really know why I'm writing this. My friend Danny said she wrote a letter once when she was sad and it helped, but she didn't say who she wrote it to, so I just sort of guessed. I'm not sad, exactly. I'm just very tired. I've been very tired for a long time, and I'm starting to think this is just what it's like, and I don't know if I want to keep finding out. I'm not going to do anything. I just wanted to say it to someone. I don't need you to fix it. Ah. Miriam read the letter 4 times. She had processed 30 years of complaints. She had read letters from people who were furious and people who were grieving and people who were so far past both that they'd arrived somewhere quieter and more worrying. She knew how to read between lines. She had been trained to do it,
and then she had done it long enough that it had become something other than training. A kind of literacy. A way of seeing the shape of what people meant underneath what they said. She read, "I'm not going to do anything," and she read what was underneath it, which was "not yet," and underneath that, "I'm asking someone to give me a reason." She did not write back. She looked at the postmark. She got her coat.
It took her 2 days. She was not a detective. She was a 58-year-old retired complaints processor who took the bus to the postal district on the postmark, which covered 4 city blocks, and began asking quiet questions. She asked at the post office. She asked at the pharmacy. She was looking, she said, for a young woman, late teens or early 20s probably, who might have seemed like she was having a hard time. She showed the letter to no one. She described nothing specific. She was simply a woman of a certain age asking about a young person, which it turned out opened a surprising number of doors, because women of a certain age asking after young people are generally assumed to be grandmothers, and grandmothers are trusted. The woman at the pharmacy knew a girl who worked at the coffee shop on the corner, had seemed low lately, kept to herself. Miriam went to the coffee shop on the corner. She ordered a tea. She sat at a table by the window. She waited. The girl who brought her order was perhaps 19, with the careful stillness of someone who had learned to take up very little space. Her name tag said Rosa. Miriam looked at her for a moment. "I got your letter," she said. Rosa sat down 17 minutes later, on her break, with her own cup of something she didn't drink. "You're not God," she said. It wasn't an accusation. It was just an observation she needed to make. "No," Miriam said. "Then why are you—" "I don't know," Miriam said. The letters started arriving. I answered them. It seemed important to answer them. Rosa looked at her. "That's strange." "Yes." "Did you come here to tell me something?" Miriam thought about this carefully. She had prepared several things on the bus. Gentle things, the right things, the things she would have said in 30 years of processing. She set them aside. "No," she said. "I came here because your letter said you didn't need anyone to fix it. I believed you. I just thought someone should come anyway." Rosa looked at the table. She turned her cup around twice. "I meant what I said," she said. "I'm not going to do anything." "I know," Miriam said. "I'm just tired." "I know." "Does it—" Rosa stopped, started again. "Does it get less tiring?" Miriam thought about her oatmeal eaten standing up, the plant that was not doing well, the Sunday phone calls from her daughter that were warm and brief and left the rest of the week very quiet. "Sometimes," she said. "Not always. But sometimes the tired changes its quality, becomes a different kind of tired, one you can carry differently." It was not a good answer. It was the true one. Rosa nodded slowly, as if she was filing it somewhere. They sat together for 40 minutes. Miriam asked her questions. Small ones, unhurried ones, the kind that didn't require anything in return. What was the coffee shop like? Whether she liked the work? Whether she had people? Rosa answered in fragments at first and then in longer stretches. And then at some point she said something and laughed at it briefly and looked slightly surprised at herself for laughing. Miriam did not make a large moment of it. When Rosa's break ended, she stood up and collected her cup. She stood there for a second. "Thank you," she said, "for coming." "Thank you for writing," Miriam said. Rosa went back behind the counter. Miriam finished her tea. She put on her coat. She walked to the bus stop in the early evening, the city doing its ordinary things around her. People going home, lights coming on in windows, the small and unremarkable machinery of everyone continuing. She felt, she realized, like herself. Not a diminished version, not a retired version, just herself, full size, walking to the bus stop. She went home. A new letter was waiting on the mat. She could see the handwriting from the door. Careful ballpoint, slightly formal. She picked it up without opening it and carried it to her desk. She put the kettle on. She found her reading glasses on the third try. She sat down. Outside the window, the street was doing its quiet evening things. The plant by the window was not doing well, and she decided now that tomorrow she would do something about that. She opened the letter. She read it. She sat for a while with it in her hands, this new complaint from this new person, its particular shape of pain, the thing underneath the thing they were actually saying. Then she uncapped her pen. At the top of her writing paper, in the space where she might once have written her name, she wrote, "Whoever is reading this." She began.